and welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Here's a look at what's lined up for you on the show tonight. The Wuhan Killer is on the prowl all over again. It is the worst form of deja vu, which could see a return to the dark times of 2020. The horror that we hoped was behind us. Are Chinese travelers bringing the virus along and making the Wuhan nightmare an ugly reality for the entire world? Tonight we get you numbers that tell the real story, and we ask, will the Wuhan Killer never die? Also on the show for you tonight, the Ukraine Interior Minister has died in a helicopter crash. We get you a detailed ground report and track the latest coming in from on the ground. We look at where the Russia-Ukraine war is headed. This is a special story about an Indian heiress who has embraced monkhood. What led her to this point? What is her life story? The battle against aging might see a win soon. Anti-aging research is yielding significant results, and we tell you more on that. In a major breakthrough, scientists have diverted lightning. We tell you how they managed to do that and why this is significant. $672 million cases, 6.7 million deaths, and 193 countries. This is the havoc which the Chinese Wuhan virus has inflicted upon us. The question is, will this Wuhan Killer never die? And I ask this question tonight because the Wuhan Killer wave is back with renewed rage in its home country, China, and across increasing parts of the world. The situation in China is much worse than its government admitted and experts estimated. According to a new projection, China is going to see a larger and more prolonged outbreak, with infections reaching a higher peak and deaths breaking gruesome records. Here is what the projection states. There are three important things here. One, cases in China could peak to 4.8 million a day. 4.8 million a day. Number two, deaths in China could peak to 36,000 on the 26th of January. That's just days away. And number three, over 500,000 Chinese citizens may die by the end of this wave. I know that numbers and statistics leave some of us numb, seem repetitive, but wake up and smell the danger. They are telling us yet another story of fear. There is a world of difference between the previous projections and the present one. And this begs the question, how far will the China wave spill over into the rest of the world this time around? Let me rephrase that. Has the wave in China already spilled far beyond Chinese borders? It sure looks like it has. Have a look at the numbers. They are from the World Health Organization. They show which countries are reporting fresh infections. And let me remind you, these are figures from the last 7 days. Let me start with the United States. In the last 7 days, it has reported over 415,000 cases and 3,922 deaths. Next, we have Japan. It reported over 902,000 cases and 2,805 deaths. And then we have South Korea. It reported over 261,487 cases and 345 deaths. Following them is Australia. It reported over 191,000 cases and over 742 deaths. And then we have France. It reported over 42,000 cases and over 469 deaths. And if I speak of Brazil, it reported over 107,885 cases. Germany reported around 73,000 fresh cases. Italy reported over 43,000 cases. So over 8 countries are now reporting new cases. Is this just a coincidence or a matter of chance? I don't think so. You see, on the 8th of January, China reopened its borders. It allowed its people to travel abroad. Could this explain the spike in infections across the world? And some reports suggest as much. Like this one, it's from the 17th of January. Look carefully at what it states. On 4 flights out of China in December, 22% of the passengers were found to be positive. 22%. Genome sequencing of these passengers revealed that they carried over 5 mutations of Omicron. And this report says most of them went to Italy. And this is not a standalone report, by the way. There is another. Take this one, for example. It was released this morning. It says nearly a quarter of travelers flying out of China after zero COVID were tested positive for the Wuhan virus. Nearly a quarter of them. Around 11% of these passengers were highly likely to be infectious to others. Now, these reports only give you an idea about how and what pace the virus is traveling at from mainland China to the rest of the world. The country that gave us this virus seems still to be exporting new variants of it without our knowledge. What's worse, this could escalate in the days ahead. Look at this report. It came out this morning. It says flight bookings in China have risen by a colossal 60%. 60. Most of them are return tickets. These are Chinese citizens that are going back home for the Lunar New Year. They are expected to fly back to their bases around the end of this month. And that's not all. These bookings also include tickets to other countries. They are of Chinese citizens looking to spend their New Year vacations abroad. Where will they go? The most popular destinations are as follows: Australia, Indonesia, Macau, Malaysia, Singapore, Taiwan, Thailand, the UK, the US. In the next 2 weeks, a host of Chinese citizens will be traveling to these countries. Most of the bookings are for Southeast Asia. If we break it down into numbers, Malaysia will be witnessing a 584% increase in tourists from China. Singapore will be seeing a 499% rise. Thailand will be seeing a 101% increase. And this data is worrying. Yet, some countries and airlines are least bothered. Look at these visuals. They are from last week. This is when the Deputy Prime Minister of Thailand himself went to welcome the first group of Chinese travelers after the pandemic restrictions. There were a total of 269 passengers. They were all personally welcomed by the leader. And Thailand reported over 4,166 cases last week. Isn't there a direct connection here? This is a major spike in Thailand from just 259 cases the week before. In fact, for the last 3 months, Thailand has not reported more than a few hundred cases every week. And now all of a sudden, it's recording over 4,000 cases in just 7 days. Is this spike linked to the incoming Chinese travelers? Who knows? And Thailand will not say. But South Korea has kept a track. Last week, it shared some eye-opening statistics to justify its rules for the Chinese travelers. It said that more than half of its imported cases are coming from China, 80% to be precise. So let me say this. It's about time that every country, whether it's a Chinese ally or not, whether it's in the grip of a wave or not, starts keeping a track of who they are opening their doors for. We've been saying this for weeks now, and we repeat this call again because we've all had enough of this Chinese virus. Our next story comes from Ukraine. Earlier today, it was hit by a tragic development, one that is being mourned by all of Europe. Around afternoon, a helicopter carrying 16 people crashed near a nursery in Brovary. This is a town on the outskirts of Kiev. All 16 people on board died on the spot. And the list includes Denis Monastyrski, the Interior Minister of Ukraine. He was just 42 years old. He was en route a war hotspot when his helicopter went down. He did not survive the crash, and reports are calling his death the most high-profile casualty since the war started. In fact, leaders from all over Ukraine are mourning his demise. Let's listen to a few statements.
Young guy, very patriotic guy, doing a lot of things for Ukraine and make a police reform in Ukraine, and is actually
I'm the vice chair of the
big strategy for Ukraine, for his family, and also children.
This is unbearable. Like every time you think you're getting adopted to the new level of tragedy, and then another thing hits you. So this is a tragic moment, definitely, and I'm kind of barely holding my tears. He was a great man, very open, very determined, you know, and very focused on his duty. He was a hero.
Condolences are also pouring in from the Vice President of the EU Commission, the President of the European Commission, Britain's Foreign Secretary. They are all mourning the demise of the Ukrainian minister. His death is tragic as it is, and what's worse is the crash has in a way wiped out the top leadership of Ukraine's Interior Ministry. You see, also present on that helicopter were the Interior Minister's first deputy, Yevhen Yenin, and the State Secretary. Both of them also died in this accident. Visuals from the crash site showing buildings covered in deep debris, parts of the aircraft scattered around. The eyewitness accounts are even disturbing. Listen into this statement of a grandmother whose 4-year-old granddaughter escaped the nursery at the last minute.
We just heard an explosion. We ran out. My daughter ran to get the granddaughter. She goes to the nursery. We took her. Everything was on fire over there. The cars near building number 19 were on fire. That's all we know at the moment.
Back in Kiev, visuals showing victims of the crash being carried to a hospital on stretchers. The country's deputy health minister saying many of them are still in shock. Listen to this.
At the moment, 8 victims have arrived here, 6 children and 2 adults. Their state is of different severity, but all the patients breathe on their own. They are in shock, most of them. All the required help is being administered. The patients are being stabilized. Afterwards, we will consider sending them abroad for recovery.
Now to some questions. What exactly led to this crash? How did it happen? Was it an accident or the result of an attack? So far, no one knows. There is no indication that the crash was planned, neither does it seem to be the result of a strike from Russia. However, many Ukrainians are saying that Russia's war is to blame for this disaster. As for the aircraft in question, it was a French-made H-225 Super Puma. Its images on your screen, reports saying this helicopter was repeatedly involved in transportation of personnel during the war. There are no reports of it reporting any technical glitches. So just to put it simply, on the face of it, the crash was indeed an accident. However, we will have to wait for an investigation for more details. In the meantime, let's tell you where the war is headed. In 4 weeks from now, it will complete 1 year. Is there a chance of it coming to an end? Not really. Both Ukraine and Russia have refused to budge. However, there are some interesting developments that tell you how tired the two sides have now become. Take this one, for example. These are visuals of the founder of the Wagner Group telling the former convicts who fought in Ukraine that they are now free to live their lives. Watch this.
You have received this booklet which you went through. Earlier I told you that I needed your criminal talents to kill the enemy in the war. Those criminal talents are not needed now. Try to remember very well that there is no need to return to a camp. You do not need to be convicted and imprisoned to return to war.
Just how do we perceive this? What made him let these mercenaries go? Is this an indication that Russia is pulling back the troops? Not really. You see, this video was released just hours after a Wagner mercenary defected to Norway. He sought asylum from Norwegian authorities, promising to offer evidence of the war crimes by the Wagner Group, also the kind of torture that it subjects its mercenaries to. So this video may just be an attempt at discarding the defector's claims. Propaganda, as they say, is also an integral tool in any war. This video may just be an example. And back in Ukraine, the government has struck a new deal, a deal to secure Patriot missile air defense systems. So far, Germany and the US were providing them. Now the Netherlands also joined the efforts. The president of Ukraine saying this will go a long way in aiding its military operations against Russia.
Today we got very important news from the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte. The news is actually a continuation of our recent negotiations with him. Another Patriot battery will be provided to Ukraine. Thanks, Mark. That is, we already have 3 guaranteed batteries. But this is only the beginning. We are working on new solutions to strengthen our air defense.
Meanwhile, at the UN, we witnessed a bitter face-off between the Russian and the Ukrainian ambassadors. The two sparred over allegations that a top Ukrainian defense official called Russians rats, swines and dogs, quote unquote. The Ukrainian ambassador rubbished the claims as nonsense. You have to watch this.
Back in September 2021, President Zelensky called on those residents, considering themselves Russians, to leave the country, and the Secretary of the National Security and Defense, Alexei Danilov, called Russians rats and swine dogs and called for them to be haunted and destroyed.
Unfortunately, we are here because of the nonsense that the Russian Federation made us listen to. But we use the taxpayers' money, and it is our duty to make sense of this nonsense, or rather to make use of this nonsense.
So at the end of the day, this is what we have. Russia and Ukraine sparring both on the ground and on diplomatic platforms, Russian mercenaries being sent back to their homes, and the EU amplifying its aid to Ukraine. From where we see it, the war remains where it was almost a year ago. Let me now ask you a question. Can you imagine not having your favorite food again? Not wearing fashionable clothes, never sleeping in an air-conditioned room, or having a fulfilled love life, and all of that at your own free will? It sounds quite impossible, does it not? Quite difficult. Who would give up simple pleasures of life, and why? Now, this would seem even more far-fetched if we think of the rich and the privileged. It's a common perception that those who are born with silver spoons in their mouths rarely look beyond their comfortable lives. The rich are often unaware of the struggles of the poor. They are pampered and spoiled, entirely dependent on their wealth and luxury. But this story might intrigue you. Devanshi Sanghvi, an 8-year-old girl from the Indian state of Gujarat, has decided to renounce all her wealth. She was born in an ultra-rich family. Her father, Dhanesh Sanghvi, is a very successful diamond businessman. He owns one of the oldest diamond manufacturing companies in Gujarat. The company has branches all over the world with an annual turnover of billions of rupees. The little girl was a diamond heiress. She could have inherited all of these riches, but she chose a different path, a path of monkhood. Devanshi has renounced her family's legacy and wants to live the life of a hermit. She has decided to become a Jain monk. Now, who are Jain monks and how do they live? Let's understand more about them first. Jainism is one of the oldest religions in the world. It originated in India over 2,500 years ago. Its followers believe in spiritual purity and enlightenment. And those who decide to follow monkhood give up the worldly life and all its attachments. They spend their time seeking spiritual upliftment. Jain monks completely detach from the social activities. They take vows of absolute non-violence, truthfulness, celibacy, detachment. They walk barefoot, eat only what they receive as alms. Now, you might find all of this difficult, and that's only natural. We have grown accustomed to living a material life, finding happiness in material possessions, being glued to our smartphones, increasingly dependent on technology, making money, building a career, traveling the world. Isn't that what life is all about for many of us? And of course, you have the right to do all of that. But Jain monks have a different worldview. They say that they don't find their lifestyle difficult, rather it brings them peace. It brings them fulfillment. It makes them feel spiritually enlightened. This 8-year-old diamond heiress has had all the luxury at her disposal, but despite that, she has led a very simple life. In fact, according to reports, Devanshi has never watched TV or any movie to date. She has never eaten at a restaurant either. The little girl is very religious, and ever since her childhood, she has followed the rule of praying 3 times a day. After witnessing 367 initiation ceremonies of other Jain monks, the 8-year-old decided to retire from worldly life. Her huge transformation was followed by a large procession with elephants, horses, and camels to celebrate the occasion. But let me tell you, Devanshi is just one example. Hundreds of young Indians belonging to the Jain community have started taking the same path. Until a few years ago, there used to be hardly 10 to 15 initiation ceremonies across India every year, but the figures have increased sharply. There were 250 such ceremonies in 2018, over 400 in 2019, and the numbers just continue to rise. While a majority of the people are stuck in a loop, suffering from several addictions, hustling day in and day out for money, for their careers, why is this section of the society renouncing wealth and comfort for an austere monastic life? And when a very young child makes such a decision, there are always several concerns whether the decision was their own. Are they mature enough to understand the implications of their choice? The interest around monkhood has been growing. Community leaders attribute this rise to 3 major factors. The first one is increasing pressures of the modern world. Our hyper-connected societies have increased the economic and social stress involved. There is a crippling pressure on youngsters to earn a living and live up to their potential. But you see, that changes when they turn to monkhood. Once riddled with concerns like family, friends, beauty, career, they purge themselves of all of these affairs. This brings along a sense of liberty and spirituality. Another reason is the rise of social media gurus. Almost all Jain novices speak warmly of their religious leaders, and these gurus inspire tremendous obedience and loyalty, using their good oration skills. They attract young people towards monkhood. Until a decade ago, in fact, Jains relied on literature for knowledge. These scriptures were written in ancient Indian languages. But this has changed with the rise of technology. Stories of the Jain religion are now made into short films, and very convincing ones. They are easily shareable on social media. The younger cohort might not pick up a book, but it's almost always using the internet. Youngsters can see one small story in a minute or two, stories that glorify renunciation, and sometimes even portraying monks as superheroes. And this is enough to influence young minds. Number 3, the growing frequency of religious retreats. A superstructure of religious gatherings allows young people to experiment with monastic life. They can dip their toes in the waters of monkhood long before they choose to commit to it. You see, that fear of a monk's life, the fear of giving up everything, it's often removed during these retreats, and that is what the analysts say. A retreat is the first step, a sort of training camp to become a monk. They slowly inspire confidence in youngsters that they can actually live like this. The appeal of the monastic life is on the rise. Hundreds are taking up the path of spirituality, even ultra-rich children like Devanshi Sanghvi. Is it time to move beyond the presumption that the rich revel in material possessions? What comes to your mind when you think of living a long and healthy life? Adopting healthier habits, perhaps? Exercising regularly? Cutting back on alcohol and tobacco? But does that really guarantee anything? You might increase the budget of your anti-aging creams to turn the clock on your skin at least. That might be all you can do for the time being. But the future looks brighter. The elixir of youth might not be a thing of fiction anymore, as Harvard scientists have moved one step closer to developing anti-aging drugs. You heard that right. A landmark experiment has given the first glimpse of how life could be lengthened. Cellular reprogramming has been used for years to rejuvenate individual cells in petri dishes. But the new study shows how this procedure could be turned into a therapy and could soon be available for human use. The research aims to develop a drug that makes people not just appear younger, but also turn back the biological clock, meaning that the drug would undo the effects of aging on a cellular level. It would boost the lifespan and the number of healthy years lived. It would also increase the user's resilience to a host of diseases, including cancer and dementia. Let me first break down the experiment for you. Here's what the scientists actually did. They studied 124-week-old mice who were equivalent to a person aged around 77 years old. Every fortnight, half of the mice got a placebo jab, while the other half were injected with the age reversal therapy, which was a modified virus carrying additional pieces of genetic code. The results was surprising. The mice that received the treatment produced a set of special proteins, and these proteins have been used to reverse cell aging since the mid-2000s. They effectively returned the cells to a younger state. And as a result, the treated mice lived for another 18.5 weeks. Their total lifespan was 142.5 weeks. Untreated mice, on the other hand, lived only for another 9 weeks. Their total life was about 9.5 weeks shorter than the other group. The increased lifespan also correlated to overall better health of the test subjects. The experiment has proved that the scientists are on to something. The therapy that they are working on is in fact capable of increasing longevity. Now, what does this mean for human beings? Researchers say the findings provide cautious optimism. that rejuvenation therapy can be safely delivered to humans, but there is still a long way to go before human trials. The approach first needs to be successful on larger animals. But one big and unexpected takeaway here was that the anti-aging therapy reduced frailty in mice. Experts say that the patients who are frail are more likely to be hospitalized, they take longer to recover, and more likely to require a carer. So, lowering the prevalence of frailty could dramatically ease the burden on health and social care. The age reversal therapy seems promising. It could lead to the development of anti-aging drugs. But some scientists have more faith in other procedures. They think that the removal of zombie cells from the body would be an anti-aging breakthrough. What exactly are these cells? They are majorly responsible for tissue and organ decay as we age. The pills that can flush these cells out of the body are already in human trials, in fact. They could be in the market within a decade from now. So, if you have been looking for quick ways to look younger, just sit tight for another 5 to 10 years. And since we are discussing drugs, here's one that Pakistan needs desperately. A financial booster shot. And I say this because the country's economy is going from bad to worse. In fact, right now, it is the weakest in South Asia. I'm not the one saying this, the World Bank is. It has released a report now on Pakistan's economic output. The report says there is no output. It is declining at an alarming rate. And that's not all. The report also forecasts Pakistan's economic growth to further slow down to 2% during the current year. And this will mark a drop of 2% points from the World Bank's estimates last year. Interestingly, the same report says that India is on a steady growth path, but the changing global environment may play a role. Let me quote now. This pace reflects still robust growth in India, the Maldives and Nepal, offsetting the effects of the floods in Pakistan and the economic and political crises in Afghanistan and Sri Lanka. The worsening global environment, however, will weigh on investment in the region. Now, coming back to Pakistan, this World Bank report coincides with the fall of the Pakistani rupee. Earlier today, it reported its 21st consecutive fall. It fell to just 0.25 against the US dollar, and this is one of the lowest in recent times. What's worse, Pakistan's own media houses are saying that the rupee will further weaken due to the draining forex reserves and a poor revival of IMF's program. If I speak of Pakistan's forex reserves specifically, last week they plunged to $4.3 billion, and that's enough to cover just 3 weeks of imports. So to put it simply, Pakistan is teetering on the brink of default. It is facing a crisis that's similar to Sri Lanka's. A weak currency, high inflation rates, mounting national debt, and ever-decreasing forex reserves. So how exactly does the country plan to deal with this? Is there a plan at all? We don't know. Islamabad seems to have run out of options. I'm not saying this. Pakistan's Prime Minister himself is. Shehbaz Sharif, this is what he said just a few days ago. He apparently said that it was shameful for a nuclear power to have a nuclear bomb in one hand and a begging bowl in the other. He said it's a matter of shame that the country still has to ask other countries for more loans. Now, let me show you something that's more shameful. This report, look at what it states. A bill has been introduced in the US House of Representatives to revoke Pakistan's designation as a major non-NATO ally. It further says that if Pakistan wants to keep the status, it must ask the US president to submit a certification which proves that Islamabad has met certain conditions. Who has introduced this bill, you wonder? Andy Biggs, a Republican from the Congressional District of Arizona. He belongs to the conservative faction of the Republican Party, and he says that Pakistan should be demoted from non-NATO ally status because it continues to conduct military operations that are aiding the freedom of movement of terrorists. It is truly a sorry state of affairs for Pakistan. On one hand, its economy is in the doldrums with no chances of revival in sight. On the other hand, its perceived allies like America are debating its status as their ally. Where will the country go from here? We shall find out soon enough. For months now, Elon Musk has been hitting the headlines. The trouble started when he took over Twitter, and he has been digging a hole for himself ever since, which is only getting deeper now. Is his hubris going to lead to his complete collapse? The facts are in front of you. Even after mass layoffs, Elon Musk has not been able to sustain his social media platform, and now he is trying to cut costs radically. Guess what his latest solution is? Auctioning off office assets. I'm not kidding. Even Twitter's coffee machines are on sale. Take a look at this report.
Fancy an espresso machine once used by Twitter employees, or a neon display of its logo? If you do, then you are in luck. Another upheaval is underway at the social media platform. It seems CEO Elon Musk is neither a good boss nor a responsible tenant. He is reportedly facing yet another lawsuit for not paying the rent for another San Francisco address. And now Twitter has placed hundreds of items from its San Francisco headquarters up for auction online. 631 lots of surplus corporate office assets are open to bidders for a 27-hour online auction. So what can the buyers get their hands on? Let's see. The most popular items are a neon display and a statue, both shaped like Twitter's bird logo, and priced over $20,000. It's almost like the social media platform it's selling off its pride with these logos. Another one is an @ symbol, which soon fetched $8,250. But these prices might increase as there's still a couple of hours left for the auction. Other items range from the mundane, industrial-scale kitchenware and typical office furniture to quirky stationary bike stations capable of charging appliances. A range of designer chairs, coffee machine, and iMacs are also in the mix. And as if that wasn't enough, more than 100 boxes of KN95 masks are also up for sale. What is the meaning of all this? There was a time when the company's taste reflected its status as a hot tech world employer. But under Musk's leadership, a lot of those luxurious items are being auctioned. This seems like a new low for the company. Now, organizers say the sale isn't intended to shore up Twitter's finances. Then, what is it exactly? Musk is doing everything to radically cut costs at the company. He has failed to pay rent for an office again. This has happened for the second time in less than a month. Other offices, including Twitter's Asia-Pacific base in Singapore, have also not been spared. The staff was asked to clear out and work from home because Musk didn't have the resources to keep the office running. Over 500 advertisers have paused spending on Twitter. The platform's daily revenue is 40% lower than last year, and it no longer has a media relations team to answer anybody's question. Chaos has wrapped Twitter, all because of one man whose arrogance, pride, and erratic behavior have no limits. Musk's rash decisions are taking down a social media platform. A number of people and institutions have already left Twitter, or more appropriately, Musk's Twitter. The CEO has shed $182 billion from his net worth since November 2021. He recently broke the world record for the biggest wealth loss in history. Elon Musk is a classic example of why too much power should never be handed to one man.
Let's now talk about a new wave that is taking over the world. This story is not about the Wuhan virus waves, not even about a new disease, thankfully. It is about a different kind of a wave, the Korean wave. Did you know that the Korean language is one of the fastest growing languages in the world? According to the annual language report of the language learning app Duolingo, Korean was the 7th most studied language on the application. Interestingly, Korean has outperformed Chinese, which has found itself on the 8th spot on Duolingo over the last few years. Have a look at this report now. The headline reads, Netflix looks to South Korea for growth as it makes a big bet on 34 new shows. Netflix is planning its biggest lineup for South Korean content. It has announced 34 new Korean titles to hit the streaming platform this year. According to Netflix, over 60% of all Netflix members watched Korean titles last year. 3 of Netflix's most watched shows are from Korea. In 2021, the Oxford English Dictionary added more than 20 words of Korean origin, saying, and I'm quoting, "We are all riding the crest of the Korean wave." Now, why am I telling you all this? Because all of these are indicators of what lies ahead. How Korean culture is increasingly making its presence felt around the world. The list of South Korean exports is long already. K-pop, K-dramas, beauty products, their food, their fashion. The Korean language might be the next big thing. Laos, Thailand, Myanmar have adopted Korean as a foreign language in their schools' curricula. These were under agreement signed with the Korean Education Ministry as per reports. Last year, Vietnam started teaching Korean at its elementary schools as a first foreign language. In India as well, the Korean language is making its presence felt. According to data by the online learning and teaching marketplace Udemy, courses in the Korean language became increasingly popular in India. The Korean language course saw an increase of 175% in 2022 as compared to the registrations in 2021. This boom in popularity of Korean culture has happened over the last several years now. Around 10 years ago, this became the most viewed video on YouTube. Gangnam Style. A lot of you might have seen it or danced to it. This was K-pop's first big moment on the global music stage. And then in the year 2018, the iconic K-pop boy band became the first K-pop act to hit #1 on the Billboard 200 albums chart, BTS. A year later, Blackpink became the first K-pop girl group to perform at a music event there, Coachella. Parasite became the first film in a foreign language to win Best Picture at the Oscars in 2020. Figures show a surge in interest toward the language in the same period. The South Korean government has also been putting in efforts to make this language and culture popular. The number of King Sejong institutes, that the government-run Korean language learning institutes, increased since the year 2007, when the organization started out, setting up 13 institutes in 3 countries. As of 2021, there were 234 institutes in 82 countries. The interest in Korean pop culture has exploded over the last few years, and a direct result of this interest, the interest in learning the language, has shot up. But what is the reason behind this? A major reason is K-pop itself. There is a desire to learn the language as a result of the interest in Korean pop culture, Korean popular culture, basically Korean music, Korean cinema, or even to work with Korean companies in Asia. The popularity of Korean content leading to the spike in interest in learning the Korean language. Students are eager to learn the language because that also helps them enjoy the culture, to be able to engage with their favorite singers or actors, perhaps. According to a survey conducted by Duolingo, 56% of the respondents said that they were influenced by pop culture to learn a new language. For Indians, improving career opportunities and personal growth were the main drivers to learn a new language. Korean language established itself as the 5th most popular language being learned in the country. But you see, this is just one part of the story. This is an opportunity for South Korea to use its soft power to engage with people, to reach out to people across industries, to increase its influence. And what better time than now? When tensions on the Korean Peninsula continue to rise thanks to Kim Jong-un's provocations, and South Korea is looking at all ways possible to increase its influence, to position itself as a global player, which will make businesses, the scientific community, other industries most interactive with Korea. This will boost the government's ability to pursue national interests when it comes to investment, education, trade. Let me now ask you, are you afraid of lightning? There is no reason to be a fan of it, you might say. It scares humans, animals. It is also deadly. Lightning strikes can be fatal. But what if there is a way to divert lightning? Our next report telling you about a major breakthrough. Take a look.
Lightning can be scary. It can also be dangerous to the extent of being fatal. The numbers itself are scary. Lightning strikes between 40 and 120 times a second worldwide and claims the life of more than 4,000 people. It causes billions of dollars worth of damage every year. For the first time ever, scientists have a breakthrough. They used a laser beam to guide lightning. First, what exactly is lightning? It's a discharge of static electricity that is built up in storm clouds or between the clouds and the ground. As of now, the main protection against lightning is the lightning rod. It was conceived by American polymath Benjamin Franklin in 1749. For years now, scientists have been working to use the same idea, but with a twist. Basically, replacing the metal pole with a laser. And now there is a breakthrough. As per a study published in the journal Nature Photonics, scientists used a laser beam to guide a lightning bolt for more than 50 meters. It was shot from the top of a Swiss mountain, the 2,500-meter peak of the Santis mountain in northeastern Switzerland. This peak has a communications tower which is struck by lightning around 100 times a year. The intention was to demonstrate that laser can have an impact on lightning. How exactly does this work? Basically, the laser beam leads to the creation of plasma, in which charged ions and electrons warm up the air, and this air becomes partially conductive, and so it is a path preferred by the lightning. Scientists hope that this technique will help protect against deadly lightning strikes. It could be used not just to drive lightning away, but to trigger it in the first place. It also means airports and tall buildings could have laser-based lightning protection systems. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
And on that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. We're leaving you with Gravitas images. Thanks very much for watching.